Joel's final hours. Jesse Morling. 4700 April 29, 2025. The dank cell, a veritable assault on the already woozy senses and smelling like a rag left to soak in container of turpentine with the abandoned cloth long since drying into ossified stone and jagged-edged sponge resembling pelagic coral permanently clawing into the bottom rockbed firmament of the deepest of sea. Joel, laboring to freely breathe under its insufferable scent that bled the eyes and wreaked havoc on olfactory glands depleting of mucus, it finally met that key inside connection so heavily anticipated. Not from inside of the holding cell previous to this one, which is where Aisha Katya Maya Mamani thought to have had transported him for his end-of-life drama, but in this cell closer to the facility as the other containment chamber, constituting one bookend to his short tenure down at his facility while wearing the hard hat of the nuclear engineer and systems specialist. An outsider looking in on his life. During these hours might have concluded that with so many duties and lives he verily must have had some reserved lives and predetermined appointment and destination point ahead and is orchestrated by some intelligent designer impervious to logical sequences constrained by Earth after. As a spy, say, being supernaturally preserved for reasons his, this infinite one's, own. The logical sequence to upend demanded by the dark hearts of desperate militia groups like these terroristic overseers. And Joel with each sighting of the candelabra was strangely left to, all the way back to that first one when detained between barbed wire, only subconsciously feel that he was on the verge of apprehending an epiphenolous concurrence as incomplete concluding. The feeling that he was being toyed with not factoring in, given the depth of their sudden discovery that was synonymous with a quotient replete laden with material value designating Joel as an auspicious find and chess piece commodity, useful on the chessboard as flag that was in these parts and coloured as a faded steeds of recorded infamy, red, white, green and black. Either as Freudian slip or overt quip or intention speaking in the past tense then. And if given to know how one man could disappear and another man to in his stead with inexplicable detail and synchronicity appear as if merely stepping out for a lunch or cigarette break and in same suit returning. Then. Upon disclosure, if given to think of Joel against desire as an angel then at this juncture toward a waning twilight hour of a commission invisibly leading him by the hand, one might easily enough be pardoned for concluding that he just might be some other thing. A contrasting depiction defying that of the cherubim floating of the cloud with a dawning halo and the golden harp strummed by the hand. This was the Joel that Pal Daniels Church Abraham's Bosom Fellowship congregation knew nothing about. Yet Pastor Lucas Aloysius Daniels would, while walking alone with Joel, sense something that was beyond both men. Speaking of how, the Lord's ways a man's in the least and one of them does for reasons his own assign the details. Even grim, and perhaps God deigns choose to remain for sanity's sake undisclosed, and God gives you so much up to the point that you can handle, and one of Joel's favorites these days from Shlomo Ben David's own writing pen, who wrote, "To everything there is a season, a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to love and a time to hate. A time of war and a time of peace." Joel himself to the Israeli president saying, characteristically eloquent, only we're verbose and long-winded. Call me a good guy worthy of his acceptable association and his salt here amid a band of terrorists, and I'll consider it the sincerest form of flattery in the least, and as a mark then of ignominy merited, and whose only repute would be unto expense of forfeiting of mission buttressed by an amoral compromising and soul sell as one unfit for mission. And on that he was singularly selected. To contain, outthink, overperform and to avenge and risk all. 'Twas said to him after returning from another overseas debacle since disentangled by fellow Mossad's quick response to leaks received. Swiftly like a hammer's head atop of the nail we might refer to as the hunch, striking with remarkable results unto a fire-sparked stream of subsequent plots foibled that couldn't then be fathomed. Beyond the hunch on which he and his peers were commissioned, overturning in days ahead on one blow that about which there was not one iota of express foreknowledge. And kind words enough when said the president to a returning Joel then, who was voted most likely to from this detail return again. No one has infiltrated deeper into the cauldron of diabolical evil, saving perhaps the city. And similarly in a plot unsuspected, save perhaps an entire civilization, and still live to talk about it while barely escaping fate as one draped in the enemy combatant civilization threatening flag, who'd think to yet while propagating the image of their form of patriotism only while propping up the unconscionable doom motion to actuate implacable vitriol. Joel, one of many about whom the Prime Minister had, for sake of conveying the good morale message to his men and women, said, through groups like our Mossad, Shin Bet and Israeli intelligence groups, the world can verily see that beyond the mere words we can combat evil and win in any part of the world, and that to the call for sacrifice for the sake of saving a people many do valiantly answer. He had a toast preserved from then reserved for Joel, one to be to the latter's surprise extended to others on the same leg of this day's worldwide mission. Joel from the confines of his cell thought of Yeshua, the elect, and an alignment of commissioning lights from the sky touching down to form the torches in the individual prongs, a constellation forming halo and headdress ignited and riding atop of the candelabra's 12 prongs. Save the centering one that up to this time of Joel's experience with them hadn't ever been lit. The flames lapping skyward that were 1/8 the length and almost twice the width of the respective sconces. Joel, O Joel, Paraphor art thou, and so that quickly does it return to me. They do verily hope to learn the more from me still. At times even from captivity as prisoner of war one could take the moment to dismiss and laugh about such, if only I could get over this rehearsing of the thought of imminent death as a result of my capture. Unless God has more for me than a public execution, if memory serves me. Either their words to me or a dream, I don't recall. Some of us high-wired traipse along the edge of risk as though only willing to find her actuating and full disclosure. I had to step into their clutches to set the others free, persons indigenous to this territory and those to mine, home or to respective posts for refuel and refurbish, reassignment and for the retention of their freedoms. And if only speaking of my own life. My life alone expendable easily enough, if only meaning that in my detainment do I still take beyond it and with me to life's other side the safeguarded secrets entrusted to me. To die on this hour simply means that by no means could I find another way to cut off the hands of these Iranian militia holding close to the breast their national secrets, unifying their people in hostile military so that they might hope to only around their cultural hopes still unite together in tyrannical song with the abnegation of progresses unto the dissolution wish of an entire people and nation from militant groups like these not a factor at mind's forefront. Let how fares with me be symbolic of how it fares for a people. Militant groups like these. These won't believe me when I straightway and straight-faced remind them that there is no other secret to disclose beyond the gift received by them from the Omani woman. And for this may be to applaud them because they'd be complete and utter fools to believe me. These ones in accordance with our way easily manipulable. And, sunny side up, thankfully by being caught by these I have added to my knowledge more of their coveted and regarded confidential things, even regime decimating things, and as I have made transfer of such to a key interest inside of my circle and sphere of critical interest, then they shall cease from being relevant on the world stage any longer very soon. Exhibit Obadiah, sir, which some have co-worded this mission as. What a proverb as lasting legacy. Either way, given the path these have chosen annihilation. These have lost long ago. As with morally as a corrupted soul, so too as a regime, however it shall fare with me. Things are preordained and declared, while assuming that these shall be kept in the dark about it all. At my every breath is a transmitted impulse delivered to the highest of high-ranking officials and friends, and that my blood pressure and my palpable stresses in tandem with the very way that I manipulate my limbs and eyeballs constitute the equivalent stuffs of cognizant thought atop of same breath as these informing vital signs do provide the recon detail beyond the mere mapping of location of worldwide positioning. Transmitter bitstream. Further model where these are Morse code adapted for any public broadcast as subsequent type of relay system to you. Mr. Prime Minister and Security Staff Chief. An inside Iranian help has delivered this to you via in-gate courier whose identification detail in dossier form is sent ahead of him. Either way, did I gamble as good Mossad should? You're damn right I did. Yes. Having for the sake of rendering inoperable their systems turning an eye on persons amongst them who could have under other circumstances been saved. Such is the non-virtue of war that some of these ones refer to as collateral damage costing. And I under workman's contract entered their mad world that is systemic nuclear decimation in these death camp factory installations, promoted to frontline by the Iranians as one entrusted with the highest level of clearances that are disclosed to their governmental head. We know instinctively before we know empirically. Whether from Joel, Caleb or Dalton Weber or Weaver, such is immaterial now. This is a miracle orchestrated by God, and for the blood on my hands I suppose before God shall I give account. Only after I shall, before meeting with Yeshua sooner than soon, stand before my Prime Minister, face to face on order, and to inform him that, with the exception being my affiliation with Aisha Romani, in sheep's dress to my unawares, not conducting necessary due diligence, still has this flawed man carried out his detail nationally and internationally otherwise with honor and dignity. I imagine then shall I be reminded that there is no such thing as carrying out a covert mission only while entrusting in the least bit or, remotely, carefully chosen word, another human source's exception. I have faith that you and the committees shall reason in my favor, and that because of the work that I have done an existential threat shall very soon with these as a centralized power no longer on the horizon loom, or, she's been rendered decapitated at the head and impotent throughout the body. Diseased throughout. Also that by living day and night with a sworn enemy to milk out of them the logistical data and relationship intel I have with great risk saved more than we lost in our battles, and inestimably more because of our clandestine ops detail, I myself pushing no man outside of the realm that he felt that he ought to go in, sirs. The faith that I can transmit to you and through you the others on privy one final time perhaps unto the saving of my body, whereas my soul belongs to God. She came in as a wholesome Esther only, where in league with her abominable Haman as Nasser affiliate only to go out as the Jezebelian whore. She was the Esther story in reverse and rearranged, and, if she hasn't already, this Jezebel whore shall pay with her life, how do I know? Okay. However, without her part I'd still be scampering for a foothold from within the ranks of this regime. Three-foiled assaults against Mossad I didn't merely with those of the intel world given to participate spectate, I was behind it. I believe that only I, as far as I know, remain from our intel network. Eventually shall these be cuffed and positioned before it, the world court, because of our mission work, in the event that our ultimate triumph is final and resolute. Hours and scarcely days to determine, the international courts verily shall receive their heads on the tribunal platter for detestable war crimes against the aggressors and her own people. And, as is understood, many amongst them, while we with boots on ground surround them, these perhaps still shall in fashion of Hitler take their very lives. That we should try these at all is unconscionable to me as a mystery that only this world could divine. These on my word shall not receive the honourable burial as had bin Laden as some sort of appeasement appeal notion, their own people to kill these wherever we might miss, as has the course before been irresistibly set. Softly but aloud said Joel, with drying blood sealing closed his outer lips with the upper lip grazing against nostril and the lower revealing teeth and gums, he threw clotted grog for a larynx labored, succinctly, Mr. Prime Minister, as pertains the brief the coordinate points have verily been delivered to you. Of the 3 silos, the notice one that does upon sabotage diffuse them all, and the detailed 3-case scenario plan for their incineration from underground is delivered into your hands only. And the dossier from this Amani interest and woman from character of interest gone culprit shall find your hands yet. She fell for the decoy letter signed with the falsified signature. As before, it remains us or them. Soon for me to die then. Maybe, only sooner for her to perish, as she has added to her blood-stained hands the blood of Mossad. Shalom Shalom Yerushalayim, sir. Peace unto eternal Jerusalem. And in words separated by pauses filled with grunts of displeasure and through what felt like a collapsed stomach lacerated sore, said he, keep yourself protected, sir, for the good of us all, and, so dark that he couldn't see his hand in front of his transformed face, he gingerly touched his fingers against that badly swollen and pained face. For sake of us all and for the good of the entire free world. Articulated through a transformed voice and as one trailing word, these last few as he under a dizzying array of discombobulating woos began to even in the darkened crypt see dizzying splotches of spiraling shreds of undefinable colors while nearing the complete loss of wayward consciousness. Only seconds remaining before should he swoon and retire into whatever and from wherever then to rise unto he knew who on the other side of this arresting drift hemming him into a seamless garment of haze. This accomplished only after he signed off bellabowedly with Wildcat, East Coast, West Coast, Dalton, Weaver, West Coast, East. Ellipsis, out, and thus he swooned. The brain, the marvel that it is, even now he stole away to his childhood friend and to the full utilization of the passions of both men as a force to be reckoned with. His seat in the Emporium housing such visits unique to this prophetic dispensation of time when riddles were into shambles smashed under the weight of reality's bread to dispose of them. It was always the cheapest price ticket that could in the least bit pay over top of the dividend exponential the handsomer wage. The master marksman, another for the musical repertoire and lil bag of witnessing tricks. Too much to Handel, ha ha ha, however Vivaldi might disagree. Joel joked, growing more pensive while ruminating to the perusing of verses there. He added, HM, Texu 178276, what's this last number looks like a... Gets upbraided by Eli, who said sarcastically, maybe a pretty darn good reason you don't read that number in the refrain or lyrics besides Joel. You kink up my prose like that, you'll cram up your melody, that's what I need, another hour or so. The wheels were turning inside of that head as the violinist's eyes flashed maddeningly about the room. That sleep-pilfering anti-anxiety defying pill setting in and taking root, a baker's dozen traceable to some guy in Pittsburgh, pa, who thinks like you, for some reason. I mean a lot like you. Pittsburgh, aka Chrysville, pa, these days. You sure none of yins ain't been down that way without pal Eli? Eli reminded, over there, Joel, where you said you couldn't forget it in 1,000 lifetimes or more. Before the hour was over, the song was masterfully outfitted with an irresistible hook, a wonderful self-sustaining refrain and unique counter-directional melody line variances between a bridge verse. Again the young men each in ways their own would blame the other for perfectly reading the mind. What Eli had written was what in this dark cell in Tehran looped through Joel's head as another episode of classics acoustical wonders worthy of the most prestigious of grand symphonic expression looped through his head. A sovereign's magnum opus, in excelsis Deo Gloria. This, master marksman as exemplar with uncanny evidences to trace, not Johann Sebastian's or blessed Handel's in. Oratorio could so resplendently imbue so eloquently in. With transforming grace. Throughout time immemorial one. Target launched simultaneously many arrows might strike, yet. Hath seen unthreaded needles throughout ages one consistent. Thread of this like. One king to be authenticated despite several and inexplicable. Odd. Motif arrow to fit profile specific with margin for error. Surrounding. His time-place characteristic key denoting genuine. From fraud, with historical record and eyewitness accounts. Authenticating, e'en spadied earth belly abounding. Yet doth. Fact substantiating o'er winnow a faith missing body of evidence. Not ignite, with assurance unknowing spirit of God showing. And still this day risen body of evidence case preserves airtight. From the house of David and of Judah tribe, one of 1,000. Sons, from Abraham, Isaac and Jacob line descended. Artaxerxes. Decree hundreds the years BC, Daniel 62 and 7 run. Against odds in striking all. Verily, and suffering servant ne'er, more suffering but on high ascended. Good Lord we implore, thou who meetest in time Micah, Isaiah, and Hebrew handmaiden at womb, may we in thy myrrh. Sweet mantle discover what fact alone shan't uncover, 'tis. Our lives sincere, imperfect, unbuttered, hidden in the in-bloom. Didn't take him long to thought convey that stream sounding like an official brief instead of send-off letter. Confused as he was between two fates, to give a face-to-face account while from the other side of a pending execution answer for campaign details. Or the drumming pulse that sustained any form of a thought toward less the auspicious transpiration or impromptu ops intervention while dreading final hours ticked down to final minutes but of certain grim fate. He conveyed that thought while confident that someone who actually would make it beyond walls of captivity in Tehran with the full assurance that the record of what he audibilize and thus transmit would reach persons concerned, namely, Prime Minister Itzhak Rosen and President Danny Levy alongside security interest operatives. Less officiously Joel said through a newfound gravely husk. Didn't take me too long at all. His voice caught in his throat as he wondered why he'd again subject himself to the pain in vibrating his vocal cords, counted it outside of my window earlier in the day. About as long as it takes to trudge from downstairs intake here to finally step on the inglorious platform taunting me still right there through the window like the dinosaur that didn't get invited to the pre-extinction list party. Prepared by them at the foot of the crane to take several minutes for whatever reason. 70, The Time of Jacob's Trouble, Planet Earth's Generation Gog-Mageddon. Ely James, all rights reserved, 2023. The news most difficult to encounter especially were, 'twas one's own self who served as both antagonist and protagonist, who had the blood on the hands some time before Judah Maccabees had the ample incriminating stain on his own. In both instances the cameras were scarcely rolling. The luxuriant bliss of midnight blue boasted of its prominence at both the scene of the crime and the location of the vanishing act. The only cloud in the earthen apprehendable stratosphere had like leaves afloat shaken from an oak tree fallen to earth. The fog impenetrable summoning the war-torn elements tinging a bleeding prismatic color arresting inside like a scarlet tear, post-twilight and somewhat muted only where screaming autumn could divest itself of nature's subdued intimation. What to make of this premature and uncommon snowfall in Jerusalem? The beautiful prisoner and damaged goods worn as a luck charm that's also known as was ignominious curse. One of several notable characters dotting the terrain of our tale, hither and forthwith to name her as co-antagonist, without whom would our Joel Weber fabric provide for us the stitching centering the hemming delineating the moral and unshorn richness of story we're involving her. Lost in the profuse darkness that was her hooded veil and resembling a character herself from one yarn of antique timelessness bottled up for keepsake of the classic volume sought when the femme fatale despaired of hope and life itself. The graceful depiction presenting to mind the lurid tale as the woman resigned to her any interpretation of fatehood. With hands cupping at lagoon water slowly climbing up her slowly disappearing thighs and blossoming gown floating around her. Mozzied into the brackish water ahead of her. Her eyes once gleaming with silvery moonlight ambience and concealing and then closed and appearing to dialogue with a serenity that was scarcely ever before personally experienced. What was in front of her mattered only in direct proportion with what mattered in her past. What arrested here, or should have, she faced while wearing as might a charm wear the front of her evening gown with elegance and composure only what could personify or embody what was unto her one cataclysmic end to justify the intention in the full composite volition speaking good tidings to her any beginnings, if maintaining dignity was the reasonable demand. 'Twas a contradiction. You detestable harlot, Jezebel you. To her enchanting haunt Judah Maccabees taunted, slowly with rounded shoulders hunkering down and backpedaling with the Mount of Olives to his left side, appearing to be with his one rolling hand and collapsing and reviving fingers a roll reeling her in and directly to him. Before you planted my cousin's identifying information at the foot of the site, do tell me how many children you murdered by overseeing the launching of the rocket. Ordered to face his charges and eventual death via hanging then. Here you are in silk robe with face obscuring hood and I hereby declare that the same is your burial cloth and shroud. Mark my words as today you perish. If Joel were here he would invariably at the sight of her once again make parallel mention of one of his Russian novels from his classics catalogue. Judah registered the thought. Surely he shall find lendable as most fitting description the femme elegant and distressed damsel Anna Karenina from the novel of the same name by Leo Tolstoy. Instead of the luring waters to snuff out her despair or the freight train to smite the candle wick of her life and non-legacy, here encroaches the epitome of the anti-Semite on design that unwittingly he did wine and dine. Approaching me in the fashion of a lady who is intoxicated by the drunken allure of her pestering antagonism that won't let her alone, the festering conscience, if a soul inherent in a soul with blood of Mossad and some 200 children and adolescents on her hands. Like the sumo wrestler he straddle-stepped and rolled with those left-handed fingers, by gesture baiting and commanding her. Come on, step into your natural otherworldly conclusion and unfabled end. Judah seemed to say. The sedative ordering her mechanical step strangely set her loose only after Judah took to the ground. Appearing like he might with one boot firm against Kidron Brook earth at once launch into the swan dive or from the end of the foot of the arching skyward pointing ski ramp lift. Stilling her as he for the first time removed her from his forefront vision. Gazing still and toward the ground directly in front of him as though in steep meditation, only the crown of his helmeted head facing her. He angled his only arm outward with extended fingers of crooked wrist groundward pointing as though halfway pinned to the cross and without his other arm to steady him. Then his friends arrived, ravenously livid, as seemed, and with all pedaling fours like fanbelts speeding away from anchoring supports. Hearing his shrilling screams alarming her until the vicious growling sounds of the guttural snarling and harrowingly cacophonous watery choking of the canines bred to dismantle and dismember terrified her from behind. One hound and then another with the yellow whites of their eyes shining as they tear at her garment before in unison ripping at her flesh. Screams silenced as dripping blood turned to gushing, her defensive stance while still on her feet a posture of panicky desperation before the woman slammed to the ground. Just maybe unluckily for her, her right arm seeming to serve as padding for her crown of head. An arm that was ripped away from ligament, bone and tendon as Judah who'd lost his appendage to warfare couldn't help but to take a special notice. Two salivating hounds disappeared with the arm bridging between them as dogs doss-I-do and clumsily like broken machinery sideways step and readjust before both turned to feasting on their own portion. Four other hounds squarely swept on in behind these beasts and, in a vicious snarling fight to solely win the body, these dogs engaged in horrid tug-o-war cluelessly with the woman prized gracelessly in a backwards retreat that was answerable only to impelled momentum and wobbly vertigo when they disappeared over the gully there swallowed them and this woman and wife of the oil mogul Mrs. Amani Hole. How she lived is how she dies. Judah, without concealing his gleaming eye and delight, slowly traipsed on over to the very area where he once with boot prepared to hammer descend on his neck with the man-grass impressions from the body of Nasser Abu Matter Hussein still evidencing where he once lay before his vanishing that evening. Judah retrieved the goblet from around her neck and the bloodied earth, held it in the air against the moonlight that was suddenly alive with the lightest dustings of snow flurries, and, turning toward the ravine and in eerie fashion stepping away from the sight of the last few breaths, as 'twere. Of the mauling, Judah let scream his decibel-climbing quiet defying whistle. Sailing it on the wind as the dogs returned to their master, each with bloody ugly moustache and flashing eyes in a horrid depiction of delayed justice finally delivering the goods. Judah through the impossible fog walked away, seeking higher elevation only while experienced the throes of an inarticulable despair, depressed with fatigue and some inexplicable cogitation overtaking him like a bandit. He muttered, "The birthday present without the candles only he isn't present." If against odds USA doesn't sweep on in to save him, yeah, as though adding a caveat phrase with articulating what he in mid-stride inserted, the fiery glow from the Temple Mount area and the corner of the temple itself catching his gloomy features and seeming to exaggerate his sluggish approach, almost seeming to be walking in reverse, matter of fact today is the day. Minutes instead of hours unless he gets a surprise of a sort only while standing on those gallows. And a nasty snarl overtook him as though borrowed from the mauling canines when he with menace mouthed something about a wretched Jezebel before making off like a dot disappearing into the mirroring glimmer of Jerusalem's main attraction only after traipsing on past the impaled east gate, still smoking in fires of wind-wafted condensation really with those the ICBM missile shells appearing like abandoned oversized cigars there. He's fought the good fight and has encouraged me to do the same. You know what they say. Blood truly is thicker than water. And for a reason unknown to him while moseying by Judah listlessly pointed without expressly looking at these diffused threats and kept on weighty-legged procession. God receive his soul. Next. 70. The time of Jacob's trouble planet Earth's generation Gog-Mageddon. Moon. Font.
Eli James Orris Reserve 2023. Today is October 8th, 2025. It's the time of Jacob's trouble planet Earth's generation Gog-Mageddon. All rights are reserved, and I'm calling this file 68 of 70. Looks like there's really 2 chapters in there, and that's